The multiverse. You all know it from Doctor Strange and Marvel's MCU. It's a cool piece of science fiction, something that we can all go to the theaters and enjoy, but not have to worry about in the real world. But how many times have you actually considered the feasibility of the multiverse? Is the sci-fi concept actually possible? Well, it's more possible than you think if we look at it from the idea of quantum mechanics. Let's start by diving into one of the most famous thought experiments, Schrodinger's cat. Schrodinger put a cat into a sealed chamber, such that no observers from the outside could see into the chamber. But for demonstration purposes, I'm going to make the chamber transparent. If I actually sealed the chamber, this video would probably be really boring. Once Schrodinger put a cat into the chamber, he added a radioactive decay. This radioactive decay has a few important characteristics. First, there's a 50% chance that the radioactive decay occurs and the cat dies, meaning that there's also a 50% chance that nothing happens and the cat survives. Second, as you probably figured out, the radioactive decay process kills the cat, meaning that in the 50% chance that it does happen, the cat dies. Which kinda sucks for the cat, but let's move past that. Schrodinger used this thought experiment to conclude that the cat is technically dead and alive at the same time. Yeah, it's a little bit crazy, but let's explain it. As we discussed in an earlier video, which is linked in the description below, Copenhagen said that quantum systems are in a superposition of several states simultaneously until they are observed, allowing them to collapse. In this case, the radioactive decay process is in a 50-50 superposition until the cat observes it. Once the cat observes the radioactive decay, it collapses into either occurring and killing the cat, or simply remaining the same. Now let's assume here that when the radioactive decay happens, it releases a poison. In a classical mechanics mindset, we would say that the gas has been released and thus the cat is dead. However, we have to remember that it's not that simple. We're talking about quantum mechanics here. So once the cat has collapsed the superposition of the radioactive decay, the new observer is now the humans who are on the outside of the chamber. But remember, the chamber is sealed, so technically the observation from the humans has not yet taken place. And thus, the cat has entered its own 50-50 superposition of technically being dead and alive simultaneously, from the perspective of the human. Now this is really confusing, but let's just think about it again. If we look at the whole timeline, we have the radioactive decay, which is collapsed by the cat into a 50-50 percentage. And from the human perspective, we don't know what has happened because the chamber is sealed. So technically the cat is alive and dead at the same time. Now finally, the human observer opens up the chamber and observes the cat, collapsing it into a dead basis state in this scenario. And this is what we see in the classical world. Now this topic in itself is extremely confusing and I am still trying to wrap my head around it. It honestly left me with more questions than when I started, but I think that's what makes it so fascinating. One of the main questions I have is, who is collapsing humans? If the cat collapses the radioactive decay and we collapse the cat, then who collapses us? And if there's nobody collapsing us, then how is it so improbable that there's not many worlds in a multiverse? What if there's alternate realities for every decision we take? And the final question that I've had since I started learning quantum mechanics is, does quantum really apply on a macroscopic scale? We are starting to learn more about how it applies on atoms and electrons, but does that translate to humans and cats and poison? And if it does, then what does that mean for the multiverse and for really everything that we know about our world? Now let's go back a little bit into history. So Hugh Everett first proposed this many worlds interpretation in the 1950s. And as you can imagine, it was met with heavy skepticism, such as some of the questions I brought up earlier. But although we still have more questions and answers, I personally find the topic extremely fascinating, and I hope you do too. But let me know what you think. Are there actually an infinite number of alternate realities that we are in superposition with? Thank you, and leave your thoughts down below in the comments.